One of the hardest personalities to have is the sort of personality that has way too many interests. Are you the sort of person like me where one side of you can speak about philosophy for 6 hours, but the other side of you just wants to go on social media and watch brain rot content? There's another side of you that maybe wants to go out with your friends all the time and socialize. Then there's another side of you that just wants to stay in, be introverted, and basically meditate and work on the little things that you need to work on. And having too many interests can either be a blessing or a curse, depending on how you look at it. I grew up in a predominantly white school when I was in primary school, between the ages of 6 years old to about 10, 11. Don't quote me on that, roughly around there. Then throughout my teenage years, I went to a predominantly black school. So throughout the course of me being in these two different environments with different types of people from different income backgrounds, I basically developed my personality in such a way that I had multiple layers to it. And when you're somebody like myself, when you have too many interests, you might find yourself in conversations with people where you're deciding which side of your personality to bring out. Yes, there's a part of you that maybe likes a bit of anime, but you're not that deep into anime that you can have an encyclopedia worth of knowledge in your head. You're somebody who likes sports, but do you follow the sports every single day religiously and can tell people about the history of your favorite team? No. But you're somebody who can sort of just about say enough about each subject that you sort of fit in within most social circles. Maybe you're the opposite. Maybe you're very much introverted, but you have a lot of interests. You're very quiet, but most subjects that people speak about, you could have your own opinion in some shape or form. You just never intervene. The reason being is we typically want to fit in within a certain category of people. Human beings are very tribal. Different tribes have different personality traits. We've seen this as far back as when we was in school. The nerds were the nerds, the jocks were the jocks, the popular people were the popular people. And as we grow up older, we see these social circles in the work environment, in further studies, different countries we go to. There's, different cultures, different beliefs, different values, and everyone has their own sort of tribe. And having too many interests can sort of be intimidating because then you think to yourself, where do I actually fit? You can never be 100% with absolutely anybody. I used to be like some of you guys. I used to think that it was a curse. See, when I used to make music, one of the reasons I fell in love with music, I've said multiple times in my videos, is the creative freedom that music gave you. On one side, you could become a businessman through the avenue of making music, but on the other side, it allowed you to have 100% creativity. You didn't have to censor the stories you was talking about. It didn't really necessarily matter what you wore. See, if you're somebody like a financial advisor, I wouldn't recommend you show up to work every day in a tracksuit. Probably your clients are going to judge you based off of that perception. And if you're somebody that doesn't necessarily like wearing suits, but maybe you have a lot of financial knowledge, there's a lot of limitations to that career path. Because technically you do have to shape yourself into the role and you have to match the image of what you're trying to build. But something like music, what I really liked about it was you didn't necessarily have to be anybody but yourself. If you want to dye your hair yellow, things like hip hop, you do that. If you want to wear piercings, tattoo your body from head to bottom, your boss wasn't going to turn you down from a job because of that. And for years, I struggled to find any sort of career path that could also fit that sort of creative freedom. I worked in sales, many different roles, from door to door to selling in retail stores to telesales, cold calling. All of these roles required a different version of me when I was doing them. And when you find that you've got too many interests, it can also be something that holds you back, because what you see online on self-improvement, they always say you need to be disciplined and you need to focus on one thing. What's the one thing you're going to focus on when you have so many interests? Do you find yourself jumping from hustle to hustle? You start off in crypto, then you jump into affiliation. Maybe you're like me now, you want to do personal brands, maybe a bit of music, streaming, a gaming channel, TikTok shop, high ticket sales. And there's so many avenues in which you can make money in the digital world or in the real world, but you don't necessarily know which one to go down. And whenever you start on one, 3 to 6 months down the line, you jump to another one. For many years, I will say that this was a problem. Having too many interests was not going to work. I remember my mom telling me that for you to have some sort of stability in your world, you need to pick one path that you go down and you need to give it 110%. But when I was in my early 20s, after you leave your parents' home, you don't necessarily know who you are. And the only way you're going to find out who you are is by experimenting with different ideas. So to an extent, having too many interests is the norm. But you're only ever going to find which path best suits you by having so many interests and narrowing these down over years, weeks, months. Some people do it within a few days. Some people know from childhood what they want to be. Some people it takes 10 years. I was one of those late bloomers. It took me till 28. Trial and error. But eventually I found the path that I want to go down, which is personal brand. Having too many interests isn't a problem. It's only a problem if you don't narrow it down as you grow. I believe in the earlier years of your life, you want to basically have as many interests as possible. But as you grow up, you want to narrow down what path that you can go down. If you're somebody that's quite technical, but you love anime and things like that, well, maybe you should get into coding. Maybe you should learn to code games. That combines, one, what you're good at, the skill of being technical, but also your interests, anime, gaming, things like that. You bring the two together. That's not for me. That doesn't fit my personality. And then through the digital world, the internet, there's always a route you can take which you can actually create independence, financial freedom from. We live in one of the most prosperous eras ever. I actually describe this era like the golden age after the Great Depression in the 1930s in America. I remember the Art Deco era. Life was basically one big party. Everybody was making money. When you go on social media, you get the impression that everybody's traveling, everybody's got a significant other, everyone's dating, everyone's having fun, depending on what your algorithm is showing you. But that's what I see. The people in shape, the holiday pictures, people living their best lives, the best vehicles. And to be honest with you, 10, 15 years ago, that's not what it looked like. Maybe we just wasn't exposed to it because we didn't have social media, but I truly believe people weren't making as much back then as they are now. There's a lot more greater opportunities. Having too many interests now is actually going to work in your favor because there is a route that you can walk down if you're just creative with the way in which you look at your career path or what you want to build for your life. Most of the time, people believe that the life they want, they just have to get disciplined. They just need to work hard at something over a long period of time, and eventually they're going to reach that. And to an extent, this is true. But what I typically find is people don't have clarity. They don't necessarily know what direction they're moving in. Because a lot of the times, people are just experimenting with an idea. But once you give yourself the blessing of doubling down on one idea, one path, that you've combined all of your interests and figured out this road best suits my personality, my background, my values, which is a process, basically breaking that down, auditing your ideas, your background, what your preferences are. Once you get to the bottom of that, everything else becomes easier because you realize you don't need to let go of your interests. You can bring them all together to make you the person you are. And who you become is a combination of all those interests.